And now Mark Gilliland will discuss the Love 'em and Leave 'em program from the history of it and where it stands today.
I'm Mark Gilliland, and although I wear a lot of different hats at different times, today I'm talking to you with my Green Policy Task Force hat on. And I just want to acknowledge we have some other members here in the audience, MJ Wilson and Nikki Coddington, and I'm not sure who all else from the task force is here.
Anne.
Oh, yes, sorry, Anne. Okay, so you've gotten the background, so let me just move forward very quickly. Anne gave you some of the background of how this all started, and this is like a real, a quick overview, and it should give us a context for upcoming soil discussion, and then with the testimonials and process discussions of the various people actually doing it in the field. I just want to make one other correction. If I'm correct, it's actually not Sean Ryan today, but his brother Scott. So, which I made the same mistake, and I apologize, but I just wanted to make a correction, Scott. Thank you. Okay, so what's the problem? Well, you know, we've all seen it in the fall. The leaves pile up on the street. They create various kinds of unsafe driving conditions. They pile up in the storm drains, and you can see this drain was just down the street from me, and it's marked clearly that it runs right into the Hudson. And so you've got a problem as the leaves break down. They do release nutrients and into the water paths, the waterways, so we'd like to avoid that if possible. And then, of course, we've been talking about the cost of collection and removal. In Irvington, we don't have a bag requirement. Instead, they just come around periodically, typically on weekends with overtime staff, and do vacuuming and pick it up and then transfer it. And then, of course, as we've been talking about, it is a valuable resource. It's locally generated, it's renewable, it's organic, and that's like got a lot. That's all the green points you could get. So people are wasting this resource that is right there on the property. So we've gotten some numbers. We saw the county number was 7.6 million, but that's all yard waste. That's not just exclusive leaves. So you'd have to have some sub-factor of that being the leaves. But in Irvington, it caught our attention because we were paying $30,000 plus in tipping fees for just leaves, and about $130,000 yearly for the cost of picking them up. The labor costs, the gasoline, the maintenance of the trucks and vacuums and all that kind of thing. That's a pretty big number for a small village. Terrytown, the estimates, looking at their numbers, is about $175,000 annually. And Greenburgh, again, looking at their numbers and factory, looks like it's somewhere in the $300,000 to $400,000 range. So, this is good money to be saved in budgets. And by saving it in the budget, you ultimately, people don't want to say that there's a tax reduction, but possibly the rate of tax increase can be minimized or slowed down. Okay, so you heard about how it started. The Love 'em and Leave 'em, the actual name actually came from Nikki after some brainstorming, so thank you, Nikki. It's we tried a couple variants, but that's the one that we loved, so we left it. And then Anne came up with the other tagline, which is, "It's green and it makes sense." And so that's a pretty good way of letting people know what it's about. The target audiences, homeowners, landscapers, municipal officials, school districts, commercial properties, condo properties, etc. So a very widespread audience. When we talk about homeowners, by the way, we assume there's two types. There's kind of the do-it-yourself that's out there doing it themselves, and the other kind that do have the landscapers, and it's going to be up to them to come to the landscapers and make a demand for this, to say to them, please do it. On the other side, the landscapers, like these gentlemen, will say, I can offer you this service, or we'll do it automatically because I think it's good for the environment and the other benefits it provides to them as a business. So, why? We talked about it. We take the leaves out of the waste stream, and it's a local generated resource. We've been talking about that. We also talk about, in general, about how it saves time and money for all sorts of reasons, but mainly because you're cutting down on the amount of handling of the leaves, especially if you mulch directly in place on the lawns You're not actually collecting, moving, and that sort of thing. You also are able to do it as kind of a last pass in the fall. And so it's part of the kind of property cleanup for the landscape community. You know, it is good for the environment, so that's a good point. You know, it's sustainable and green, and it's simple to learn and implement. It's really not difficult. It's just essentially understanding that you can do it, and the research has shown that it's not, you know, that's not detrimental to, for instance, turf areas. And, you know, spreading the word. And finally, it may become mandatory, and of course mandatory, there's a couple of meanings to that. I'm not sure if it will ever become, you know, legislated that you must do this, but what happens if the communities start just stopping all leaf pickup whatsoever, so you would not have any choice at that point. Or if you start to go toward a pay-as-you-throw model, then homeowners are going to be pushed very quickly into trying to take care of their own organic materials on their own property. Okay, so it's very simple. You leave your leaves on the source property. You can shred them right in place on the lawn using a mulching mower. We'll hear more about mulching mowers. Basically, it really does consist of just a special blade and possibly a port or a block on the exhaust outlet of the deck. Thank you, Tim. And so it keeps the material under the deck longer to help shred it more. And then you can also use the shredded mulch if you are perhaps shredding them, mulch taken off of the paved areas. You can shred it and put it right on your garden, your flower beds, your tree areas, and that's actually acts as a great winter mulch. And if you have leaves in the wooded areas and your scrub margins, just leave them there. The trees and the plants have, you know, evolved expecting to have their own leaf litter around them. It's fertilizer for them, and it's also builds the soil around them. And then, you know, whatever you have excess, you can in fact compost it, you know, with or without pre-shredding. Anthony will probably talk about a property where he does that already. There's a certain amount of mulching in place, and then he takes the excess and has started a large compost bin. He intends to put that all back onto the lawn and onto the beds because the soil of this particular property needs help. Okay, a lot of benefits here, and I'm not going to go through them all because, you know, that's all the fine print, and you can get it off this presentation, which is posted on the website, and I'll show you that URL at the end. But basically, the one thing that isn't here, it was a notion recently, there's been a lot of discussion about how the scientists and researchers are now beginning to understand that actually putting organic material into the soil, compost, mulch, that sort of thing, is a very effective carbon sink. Not only does it increase the quality of the soil, but it actually is a way of helping to deal with the excess carbon. So that's not on there, but that will be eventually. Okay.